All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. Let me zoom in on my screen here so I can see. So if you have your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be where you can post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen like a tablet or a mobile device. If you're on a larger screen like a laptop, desktop computer, then it's typically going to be to the right of the video. So I start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So looking at that, it's going to be Matthew W. So if you happen to post your question more than an hour ago, no worries. If you're here waiting to see your question get answered, just copy and paste your question in there, and then we'll get it answered later on. If you're new to office hours, that's how I do it. The reason why I do that is I want to try to answer questions for people who I think are here waiting to see their question get answered. If you asked your question at 9 o'clock last night or something like that, I'm guessing you're not here still waiting to see your question get answered. So that's why I do that. So if you're new, you can come on here just an hour before or during the office hours. You can post your questions as well, obviously, and we'll get them answered. So starting here with Matthew W. says, "Hey, Q, I'm learning to hit a proper fade. I understand the general mechanics of the fade. Face slightly closed to the target, face then open to the path. But I'm having trouble getting my path going left. Feels extremely awkward and choppy to swing along my feet line when my feet are set to the left. Any tips on finding a comfortable path when hitting the fade?" I would just try to go to extreme with it and then tone it off. If it's different with your feet pretty much in line with your target line, right? And you've always kind of felt like you're swinging along the target line. The first time that you are trying to swing to the left of the target line, it's probably going to be uncomfortable. So I would just go extreme with it, try to hit the biggest slices that you can, and then start to ease off of it, and you'll get more and more comfortable with it. The way that you're doing it is the right way. I think you just need to get more reps in with it to get more comfortable with it. So again, that's just going to be, I would try to go to extreme with it and then get reps in. And like I said, that's going to make you more comfortable with it the more that you do it. So Kevin M says, "Hi Q, can you please clarify the right elbow position at impact and follow through? Really love the office hours tuition. Thanks so much." So it depends on how much body rotation you have. The more body rotation that you have, the more into your body it's going to be, right? So if you look at someone like Dustin Johnson, who has a lot of body rotation, right? He's coming into impact. He's got his elbow really tucked into his body. He's got more bend in his arm as he's coming into impact. And then you look at somebody maybe like Brooks Koepka, who doesn't have a ton of body rotation. He's going to have a little bit more of a straighter arm. So really, there's no one elbow position that you have to be in because it can vary from player to player to player. But basically, at impact, your trail arm, your elbow should be pointed somewhere near your trail hip. And it can be a little bit out away from your body and a little bit outside your hip. If you don't have a lot of rotation, you release it a little bit earlier. Or if you release it a lot later, it needs to be more in your body, a little bit more bend in it, and a little bit closer to your body is typically where you're going to see that. Jonathan O says, "I am able to make solid contact and achieve good distance with my irons, but the direction the ball is inconsistent going left or right. I believe it is due to the face of the club. Can you recommend a drill to use to improve my accuracy?" So if you're hitting it solid, meaning you're hitting it in the center of the face, then it comes down to the direction the club face is pointing along with the direction your club is swinging, right? So if you have, it'd be hard to say exactly mechanically why you're having issues with that. But what I would try to do is I would try to go out and intentionally hit draws and fades and straight shots and just do kind of a drill where you set up your feet the same way every single time. And on one, I would try to hit a draw. So in order to hit a draw, you need to swing more from the inside with a closed face. All right, so I would do that and then do that until you're successful, right? So if you do that and you hit a block out to the right, unsuccessful, that means you didn't have the face closed enough. So I would work on trying to get the club face, more closed on the next one. Once you get the draw, then I'll go to the fade. Again, you're not changing your stance or anything. You're just changing how your body is moving to produce these shaping shots. And it's going to help you to feel exactly, what you need to do. Now, as far as typical things that are going wrong mechanically when people are struggling with face and path, the most common thing that I see is a stable and fluid spine. The spine angle being too far angled away, moving around too much, and so on and so forth. So if you're losing your posture, your spine angle is moving toward the target, away from the target, and moving around everywhere instead of staying in your posture, right? Staying in your posture and then having a nice stable spine where you're turning on a nice stable spine where you're not sliding your hips and moving your hips or moving your spine everywhere. That's where you're going to get into issues with controlling things. It's going to be more difficult to control things. So I would be looking at the stable fluid spine course as well and making sure that you are nice and set up with a nice angle a little bit to make it a lot easier to control those things. But if you combine the stable fluid spine course, which to get to it, click the instruction tab, then click the top speed golf system, and then click the stable fluid spine and start working through those drills. If you combine that with, building your skills up with being able to control the ball flight, so hitting draws and fades, and then somewhere in between, and alternating hitting between those, you're going to build your skills up to be able to control those things much more easily. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so Steve R says, notice that Clay lifts his left toe prior to starting his backswing. I did this, and it greatly improved my shoulder turn and ball striking. This make no sense. Any idea what is happening to my body? So basically, Clay doesn't even really know that he's doing that, but he's doing that because he's loading up into his trail foot. So if I load up into my trail side right away, right, then you can see my toe will kind of pop up a little bit if I really try to load that up, right? If I'm really loading up in my trail side right away. And you'll see it in some tour players here. You'll see some of them will have that toe kind of pop up. And it's just them basically unweighting this foot and getting pressure into this trail foot. And when you put pressure into the trail foot, it makes you turn your hips. It makes it easier to turn your hips. It's very difficult to turn my hips and to turn my shoulders if I'm not putting pressure into the ground. So that's what's going on. He's basically unweighting his lead foot, and then that pressure is transferring to his trail foot, and that pressure is allowing him to push his hip back and out of the way and allowing him to get a much bigger shoulder turn, which gives you more power. So it makes total sense that you've really improved your shoulder turn, because it sounds like now that you're getting pressure into that trail foot, which is going to help you to turn the hips more and turn the shoulders more. So it definitely makes a lot of sense. And if you think about it that way, hopefully it makes sense to you as well. Stevie says, trouble starting the downswing with my shoulders causing casting and shots to the left. Yeah, so you want to start the downswing not with your shoulders, but from the ground up. So I would try to feel like you're getting pressure into the ground, and then that's starting to get the hips to turn. That's getting the torso to turn. That's getting the shoulders to turn. And then that club is probably going to need to feel like it's more behind you. Because when you're hitting shots to the left, assuming that you're right-handed, that's because you're pulling it. You're swinging over the top. So you're probably getting up here and then starting the downswing with the shoulders by just going like this. So from this angle, that would look like this. You're going up the top and then going like that with the shoulder. I'm exaggerating, but that's more than likely what's going on. When you swing over the top, that's going to get your club path going out to in, which is going to lead to pulled shots, pull hooks, and things like that. And that sounds like that's what you're experiencing. So we need to get that shift to the lead side. We need to get the body starting to unravel and everything building up momentum. And we need to get this club working more behind us. So that way, when we rotate, that's going to allow you to have that club on plane. Because if you still do the same thing with your shoulders and you rotate your body, you're just going to come over the top even worse. So you need to make sure you're starting the downswing from the ground up. And I would also feel like you're swinging way into out. Try to hit some blocks out to the right. And if you do, just ease off of it a little bit. All right, so let's keep going here. Stevie says, I see 22 questions posted from yesterday. How do you know if they are listening today? So there is an office hours schedule. If you go to the office hours page or if you go to the home page, you'll see that there's a schedule. I'm on here for an hour a day. So 5 days a week. So on Monday, it's 5 p.m. Eastern time. Tuesday, Wednesday, it's 11 a.m. Eastern time. Thursday, today, is 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then tomorrow, Friday, will be 11 a.m. Eastern time. No office hours on the weekends. Then we're back here on Monday again, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And we go for an hour. Typically, if we get on here and, it's 10 till and we don't have any questions and nobody's asking questions, then we may stop it early. But generally, we're going to be on here for an hour usually. So hopefully you're on here, Steve, and Steve E, and you're able to see your question get answered. But that's how the office hours work. We're not on here 24 hours a day. I wish I could be on here just to do that all the time, but I have to be able to sleep and do lessons and do a bunch of my other responsibilities as well. So Ben S says, I flattened my swing out with the move and it was going well. Then I tried to get my backswing straighter back and less inside. And now I'm push fading. Can you help me with some drills? So I would go back to the second lesson from the move, because it sounds like you're getting the path to work into out. You're just leaving the face open. So a push fade is where the face is either very open to your path, depending on how much it's slicing. If it's a push and a little bit of a fade, then that means that you're getting your club to work from the inside. You're just leaving the face open to that path, right? So if we were to put it in degrees, let's say that your path is 10 degrees into out and your face is 12 degrees to the right. So your face is just a little bit open to your path. So that would be a push fade. Now, you could have a push fade where the face is very open to the path, meaning that maybe your path is 0, but your face is very, very open. And that would be a ball that starts to the right and then fades a lot. So depending on how much it's fading, either way, you need to get your face closed to your path. That's what I'd be trying to do first. And that's the second video from the move course, that compress the heck out of the ball video. That's the one where we're coming down here. We're pausing when club is parallel to the ground, and we're turning that grip down to where the club face is pointing down toward the ground. That's what the compress the heck out of the ball video is, and that's going to allow you to get that club face closed, right? So I would really feel like you're coming in almost like your wrists are doing. So the emblem of your glove is kind of pointing down toward the ground, and the palm of your hand is kind of pointing down toward the ground. Almost like if I were to take the lid off this box of balls, and now we're just going to throw it like a Frisbee, right? That's what you want to feel like with your lead hand. And then if I were to be waxing a car, right, with my right hand, that's what I want to feel like there. So the palm of my hand's kind of pointing down toward the ground, and I'm turning my wrist that way, which is going to help me to close the face. Now that's extreme, right? But I would try to feel that extreme kind of feeling to get that ball to turn over for you. I'd actually try to get the ball to start to the right and hook. And once you get that, work through the rest of the videos in the move course to tone it down. Because in the second to last video, we try to turn that hook into a little baby draw. And then in the last video, we try to turn that draw into a straighter shot or even a fade if you want it to be. So that's what I would continue to work through the move course once you get that ball hooking. But I'd really focus on swinging, getting that club shallowed out, flattening it out, and then that feeling with the wrist that I just talked about to get that club face closed a little bit more. So David H says, give me your favorite and most successful drill for clearing the left hip. So really what it comes down to is not extending your hips too soon. Basically feeling like you never extend your hips. Because typically what I see, and this may not apply to you, but I'm just giving you asked for my most successful common drill. And like I said, this is the most common thing that I see, but it may not apply to you. So, take it for what it is, basically. But typically when people don't get the hips to open up, it's because the hips move that way. They're extending too early extension, right? So what's the opposite of early extension? That would be late extension, right? So if you really wanted to exaggerate that, you could call it zero extension. That's what I would try to feel like is going on. So this angle, when you go up to the top of the swing, right, you're actually extending a little bit. So when you go up to the top of the swing, your hips are, you're actually extending. When I say extending, you can think of it this way. You can think of it as the angle between at my hips here, the hips being the vertex, the angle between my lower body and my upper body. This would be bending, and this would be extending, right? Where I make that angle bigger. So making the angle smaller would be flexion, right? Bending, and then extension would be where we're making the angle bigger. So when we go up to the top of the swing, we're actually extending just a little bit. Because if we stayed in that forward bend, so yeah, Dress, you have some forward bend here. If I stayed in that forward bend, I would look like this, right? And that's not what we want to do. So you're actually extending just a little bit, and you're turning and tilting your shoulders, right? So my shoulders are going to be doing this a little bit. I'm going to be getting a little bit of what's called left side bend when I go up to the top. And that's why it doesn't look like we're extending, because we're also turning and tilting our shoulders at the same time. It kind of creates this optical illusion that we're not extending, because our head is kind of staying still, right? Our head isn't moving a lot. Whereas if I stayed in that forward bend, it would look like this, right? So we're turning and tilting our shoulders as we're extending a little bit. Now, you can overdo this, right? You can extend too much and you can look like that, and that's not what you want. So you want to keep your head fairly steady and turn and tilt the shoulders and extend just a little bit. If you keep your head steady, that's going to be about the right amount of extension. Now, in the downswing, what I would try to feel like is that this angle between your upper body and your lower body, I feel like that angle gets smaller and it never, ever gets bigger, right? So what that would look like, what I would try to feel like, is that you're here, and then in the start of the downswing, you make this angle smaller, and then it never, ever gets bigger. Basically meaning you never, ever do this in the downswing. That's what I would try to feel like you're doing. And the reality is that you'll probably look, more like this. You'll probably actually come in and then extend just a little bit. So that's what I would try to feel like. The best drill to fix anything most of the time is to exaggerate what the opposite is, right? So most people don't open up their hips because they have early extension, because the hips are extending right away in the start of the backswing, or start of the downswing, excuse me, or they're extending very quickly in the start of the downswing. They may do a little bit of that flexing, but then they extend too soon, right? That's probably more common, but that's the typical reason why I see people don't open up their hips. So what would be the exaggerated opposite of that? No extension, zero extension. That's what I would try to feel like, is that you're keeping this angle between your upper body and your lower body the same throughout the start of the downswing. All right, so we're getting here, and then I'm keeping this angle. If you look at it from this angle, right, that angle is not getting bigger. I'm staying in that angle. That's what I would try to feel like you're doing. That is what I have found to be the most successful way to get somebody opening up their hips. But there are pitfalls with this, because when you get your hips more open, other things are going to tend to want to open up too, meaning your chest is going to want to open up more, your arms and your hands, everything. If you watch here, if I don't change anything with my upper body and I just do that zero extension, look what happens to my club. My club is going way over the top, right? So you have to make sure that you're shallowing out the club. You have to make sure that you're tilting your shoulders as you come through. There's a lot more to it than just opening up the hips. There's a lot more to it than that. That's why it's so complicated. That's why it's so hard to get the hips to open up, because there's so many things that go along with it that you have to do in order to get it opening up. So just a second here. So again, take that with a clear take that with a grain of salt, because I wouldn't go to the range and then work on that, and then you start hitting really bad shots and think, oh, it didn't work for me. It may have worked for you. You just have to fix all the other things that go along with it, that opening up the hips. There's things in the golf swing called matchups, right? So a more shallow swing matches up with more side bend, matches up with more open body, matches up with more shaft lean, matches up with bowed wrist angles, and so on and so forth. So you have to match all those things up. If you just take if you're someone who doesn't have any side bend, you early extend and you flip, and you have wrist angles that are flippy wrist angles, early release wrist angles, and then you open up the body along with it, you throw that in there. Well, you're not going to have a functional golf swing, right? You're gonna end up coming way over the top because you're likely not shallowing out the club. You're likely flipping with your wrist angles and things like that. So that's why it's difficult. I would recommend working with an instructor to get you on the right track with doing something like that, because it's just very, very difficult to know all the things that you've got to change when you're doing that. So we do offer unlimited swing reviews. Let me check and see. I know Robin had just opened up some spots. But let me check and see if there's any spots available. All right, yeah. So it looks like that nobody has any spots available at the moment. But what I'd recommend doing, if you want to work on that and make sure that you're on the right track with it, I'd recommend working with an instructor, joining that waiting list, so that way you can send a video to your instructor and you can get help with it. All right, so James M says, I have a Cleveland 588 driver, 45-inch, that I cannot keep on the course. I have trouble with my feet, so making a full turn through the shot is difficult. My shot starts right and fades more. I just met with the Cleveland pro at my community who says that a shorter shaft would not necessarily help. I'm using a Tour Edge 43 and a half driver that is offset and works well. Wondering, is shortening the shaft and then it cuts off. So he's exactly right. It may not necessarily help. What a shorter driver can do is it can make it a little bit easier to control, to hit it in the center of the face. Now you have to look at where the root of the issues are. Why are you hitting a push fade? Well, what's happening at contact are one of two or both of these issues. One is that you are more than likely you're leaving the face open. That's definitely what's happening. Is the face is definitely open to your path. We know that that's going on. Your path, your club path, could possibly be too much into out. So if you swing into out and you have the face open, that's going to be a push fade. If you swing on plane and the face is very open, it's going to be more like a push slice, because there's going to be a bigger difference between your face and your path. The other thing that could be going on is a heel strike. So when you hit the ball off the heel, the ball will tend to fade more than it normally would. So that could be part of what's going on as well. Now, a shorter driver may make it easier to control the club head and control the face and be able to hit that ball more in the center of the face. There's a reason why your wedge is you probably hit your wedge more in the center of the face than you do your driver, because it's shorter. It's a heck of a lot easier to control. So, a shorter driver, an inch and a half may not seem like much, but that is a huge difference actually with a driver. So, and really the only way to know if a club can make a difference for you is honestly just to get professionally fit. It's really the only way to know. Now, an offset driver can help as well, because it's going to help you to get that club face a little bit more closed, because it's giving you just that little bit more time because it's offset. It gives you that little bit of time extra to get that face closed, right? Whereas with a normal driver, the club face is set. It's not offset. It's more in line with the shaft. And if you're leaving the face open there and then you use an offset driver, it's going to make it easier to get the club face closed. So an offset driver that is shorter, it can help. I can definitely see how it helps, because it can help you hit the ball more in the center of the face. And it can help you get the club face a little bit more closed, which are more than likely the issues that are going on. But it's not going to necessarily fix your path. If you're swinging into out too much with an open face, that's just going to turn that push fade into a block out to the right that may be a little bit more solid. The other thing about using a shorter driver is typically your club head speed will go down. Because if you think about a fan, right? You think about the tips of the fan blades. The tips of the fan blades are moving faster than the inner portions of the fan blades. That's the same thing if you're using a 45-inch driver versus a 43.5-inch driver. Typically, you're going to swing that 45-inch driver faster. So you have to find that happy medium for you that gives you the control to hit it in the center of the face and the speed that you would want to be able to hit long drives, right? So that's what you have to find there. Now, there is a point of diminishing returns, right? If you were, you could swing a driver that's 45 inches and you may not swing it as fast as a 43.5-inch driver. That's normal. There have been some studies on this. They have found that if you have longer arms, generally you're going to do better with a shorter driver, and vice versa. If you have shorter arms, you're going to do better typically with a longer driver. And this is actually true for what I've seen. I believe it to be somewhat true because Clay has shorter arms. He doesn't have real long arms, but he prefers a longer driver. Myself, I have longer arms, and Clay's a little bit taller than me, and we reach up. If we were to reach up, we would be hitting the same. We would be reaching up to the same place, and he's actually taller than me, like an inch or two taller than me. But my arms are longer than his, so I can reach up to the same spot as we do. We know that because we were doing a vertical jump test, and we reached up to basically the same spot to start out with. So, yeah, I play a little. He plays. I think he plays like a 46-inch driver, and I play a 45 maybe or 44.5. I don't remember exactly how long mine is, but I prefer a shorter driver, and he prefers a longer driver. And I think it has a lot to do with the length of our arms. So that's something to think about as well. But essentially, if to know what works best for you, you have to get fitted. And if you get fitted, you'll find out, okay, well, this driver is the best thing for me. Well, I'm still pushing it. A club can only do so much. Your club's not going to get you on plane, right? If you're swinging way over the top or too much under plane, a club isn't going to get you under plane. What the club can do is it can help you control the face a little bit more with the weight of the club, with the length of the club, with the offset nature of the club, and things like that. It can help you control the face angle and the strike location a little bit more, but it's not necessarily going to help you. If you're swinging way over the top or way under plane, it's not really going to change that. Now, it's possible if you get a heavier club, you may swing a little bit different on a different plane than a lighter club, but in general, it's not going to fix your golf swing, right? So Mark S says, my takeaway is too shallow. What is a good drill for the proper takeaway? What I'd recommend doing is putting like a pool noodle, like in the ground, back behind you here, and match it up with the lie angle of your club. So kind of put it back this way. So if you pretend that this club is a pool noodle, you can put it right back here. And then I would practice getting the club to go above that and then under it, right? So above the plane and under the plane. And that's going to help you to get the takeaway a little bit more out. And I would just exaggerate it, right? Exaggerate it working out, because what feels like this to you is probably going to feel more like that when you look at it on video. So that's what I would try to do. I try to get to work above it and then below it, because generally you're going to do better with a steeper backswing, which is going to help you to lead to a shallow downswing. And I would also make sure that you're working on getting this more steep takeaway actually helps your impact. And that unless you're just going for aesthetics, if you just want your takeaway to look better, and you don't care if it actually helps you play better, then fine. Do whatever you want. But if you want to work on something to actually improve your golf game, you have to make sure that the takeaway is the thing that's going to improve your impact. Because if you don't work on things that help you to improve your impact, and your goal is to get better, then you'd be wasting your time if you're just looking for something to make your takeaway look better. Raymond Floyd brought that club way inside on the backswing and played just fine. Had a very, very shallow backswing and played just fine. So you can play great golf from having that club go way inside. Calvin Peete, way inside. There's been a lot of great like Hall of Fame players that have brought that club way inside. So you got to make sure. Now, if you're someone who's bringing that club inside and then coming way over the top in the downswing, yes, basically doing the opposite of that, getting it more steep in the backswing and shallow in the downswing can absolutely help your impact and help you get better. So I'd make sure that is the case that you're trying to improve, because otherwise what you're doing, it may be, I'd hate for you to spend a lot of time working on something, putting in the reps, working really hard to get it to be right, and then it doesn't actually help you, and it may actually make you worse. So make sure that what you're doing is actually improving your impact if your goal is to get better. If your goal is just aesthetics, then have at it. Richard S. says, Q, thank you for your assistance. I have a huge problem with decelerating on my short game shots. Any idea? So I would just really exaggerate the opposite. That's really the key to fixing about anything in golf is to exaggerate the opposite. So if you're doing something that you don't want to do, like decelerating through your shots, right? So typically if you're decelerating, it's because you're taking too big of a backswing and then you decelerate through, right? So what the opposite of that would be taking a short backswing and really accelerating through. That's what I would do. I would hit some shots where you take a really short swing and then you really accelerate through. And then I would take some swings where you take a really long swing, right? And then you decelerate through. And then I would do something in between, where I go back and through, and it's more of just kind of a more of a steady tempo rhythm and things like that. So that's how I would recommend working through that. So do short swing, accelerate really hard through the ball. Long swing, decelerate. And then do a swing that's somewhere in between, and you should find your kind of your happy place somewhere in there. So Kevin M says, I'm sorry, work made me miss my question slot. Ivan, view the overall office hours for any time, please. And how? Can I not? Sorry, practice. So yeah, we archive the office hours. I think that's what you're asking. If you're asking if you can watch the office hours that's already been filmed at any time, yes. So we archive all the office hours. So after I'm done, at the end here, within the first few minutes after I'm done, I'll go to the I'll go on there and I'll archive it. And then to get to those archived office hours, you just click the office hours tab and then click, I think you just go to the office hours homepage. Let me double check that. I haven't been asked this question in a while, so I can't remember. So I think you go to the office hours tab at the top and then go to the office hours highlights. Yep. So go office hours tab, then office hours highlights. And then if you scroll down there, if you go below the highlights there, and you keep scrolling all the way to the bottom, there's going to be quite a few highlights from the last month or so. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see where it has the office hours archive. That's where there's going to be a playlist there where you can watch the any of the previous office hours. Hill S says, what are some drills to stop me from swaying back in my backswing? What I'd recommend doing is taking like a chair or an alignment stick or something like that, putting this on the outside of your hip, right? And then I would take some swings where you focus on not touching the chair. So I'd set up to where it's just barely not touching you, right? And then I would take some swings where you're really focusing on not touching the chair. So you can see there, I'm not touching the chair at the top of the swing there. And if you still touch the chair, then you really need to exaggerate. Now, what you really want to be careful of is that you don't do a reverse weight shift when you do that. So what that means is that when you go up to the top, you're not shifting your weight to your lead foot. You want to make sure that you're loading into your trail foot, but as soon as you start getting pressure in that trail foot, that you start pushing that hip back and out of the way. That's what you want to make sure that you're doing, because otherwise you're going to end up here and then you're going to tend to fall away in the downswing, or you're just going to chop way down into the golf ball. So what you want to make sure of is that you're loading up, you're staying behind the golf ball, you're loading up here. You're not swaying your hip, you're turning your hip back, right? Back and out of the way, getting that good shoulder turn. You're more than likely going to get a much bigger and better shoulder turn and be in a more powerful position here as well. And then from there, you're going to get a little push off from the trail side and swing through from there. So I just put something on the outside of your hip there to give you some feedback, and should help you to keep from swaying in the backswing. All right, so we got 20 or so minutes left. Keep the questions coming. Yeah, so like I said, we got 20 or so minutes left. Keep the questions coming. And we'll keep answering them. If we don't have any questions, then we may cut it short for today. Up to you all for sure. Can you show me the exact moment of impact? Or sorry, I missed one. So I'll get back to that. Alberto A says, I do not raise my right elbow very high. I tend to keep it closer to my right side. Your thoughts on this? It's fine to do that. It's going to be harder to get more power if you do that. There are some players like a Matt Kuchar, for example. Matt Kuchar keeps his elbow pretty close to his side there, and he kind of ends up in a very flat position like this. You can play fine golf doing that. You're just not going to have a lot of power because you're not getting as much time and space to accelerate the club. If you let your elbow kind of elevate, right? So now if I let my elbow elevate a little bit, now you can see my arms and my hands and the club are much higher. I have a lot more space to accelerate the club and be able to create some speed and get some distance. So what I like to have is what I call a 90-90-90 position. So what I mean by that is you have 90 degrees between your side and your arm and your upper arm, and then you have 90 degrees between your upper arm and in the lower part of your arm, and then you have another 90 degrees between your lower arm and then your wrist there, the back of your hand. All right, so that is a great position at the top. Now it's not really 90 degrees. It can be a little bit off. The one between in your elbow here, generally that's going to be really close to 90 degrees, but this can vary a little bit, right? This can vary a little bit. We can be a little bit higher and we can be a little bit lower. You know, you're probably somewhere in this area. But like I said, when you're in this area, generally you're going to have less power because you don't have enough elevation in the club to create more speed. So you may find by getting getting that separation, getting that up there, and you may find that it's easier to get some speed or get some effortless speed when you do that. So that'd be something I'd be looking at. A great drill for this would be just kind of the 90-90-90 drill, just going up to the top of the swing. And I would do it with kind of one arm at first, just going up to the top of the swing and getting into that 90-90-90 position. So you can see I've got 90 degrees here, 90 degrees there, and then 90 degrees with my wrist. And like I said, they're not all exactly 90 degrees, but that's what I'm feeling like I'm creating 90 degree angles. And then I just swing through. And then once I get comfortable with that, now I'm going to put both arms on the club and try to get into that same position, right? Do a pause at the top, and then I would add some fluidity to it and then work forward from there. But that's only if you're really if you're really struggling with distance, that could be a way to get you some extra speed. So I would use a launch monitor, like a PRGR, or a swing speed radar or something like that to clock yourself to see if you're getting some extra speed from that. Because it's only, if you're hitting the ball great, doing what you're doing right now, then the benefit of getting it higher, to getting this separation, getting this angle, is that it can help you get some speed. So if it doesn't help you get speed, then there's really no reason to do it, right? So that's kind of what I was talking about before when someone was asking about the takeaway. Everything that you change with the way that you move, it has to help you to improve your impact. Otherwise, it's a waste of time to do. If you're just going for aesthetics, when you see people, you see a lot of people with their arm elevated, and you don't elevate your arm very much or get that separation. So you're thinking, well, aesthetically, you feel like it doesn't look good. But if it doesn't help you to get more speed, and there could be other things that arm you know, if you get the arm right here, you may tend to want to throw the club right away if you get too much. Because a lot of times if you get the arm really close to you, you'll tend to have a lot of bend right here too. You know, you'll kind of be, if you're looking like this, where you're really scrunched up like that, I'm guessing you likely cast and come over the top or something like that. So you may really want to work on that 90-90 drill because it may help you to get some lag. It'd be hard to say without seeing your swing, but those would be some things I would consider. So 90-90 drill will probably be a good route. But if it's just to get speed, then I'd use a speed device to see if it actually helps you. So Robert G says, can you show me the exact moment of impact? Sure. So basically, we can kind of go from the ground up. So from the feet here, you're going to have most of your pressure in your lead heel at impact. And your trail heel is going to be off the ground a little bit. And this trail foot's going to be mostly unweighted. Now, if you're just getting into a static impact position, you're going to have more weight in the ground because we're not moving, right? But in the dynamics of the swing, this leg it's unweighting, right? It's just kind of coming all the way around like that. So, but at impact, typically we're going to have pressure into this lead heel here. We're going to have this trail heel coming off the ground, and there's going to be most of our pressure is going to be in this foot. 75-80% of the pressure, total pressure between the total pressure that you're putting in the ground is going to be in this lead foot and mostly into that heel, right? With the knees, we're going to typically have a little bit of bend in this lead knee at impact, and it's going to be going from a flex position to a straightening position. So it's not going to typically be straight at impact, but it's straightening as we're coming into impact. So basically here I am, I'm coming in, and you can see how my leg is straightening. It's not straight yet. It's still not straight yet. It's typically not straight until after that straight line release. It's not completely hyperextended, basically. So it's typically about right there. My hips are typically going to be about 45 degrees open. Or let's go back. My trail knee is typically going to be kicking in a little bit. And then my hips are going to be about 45, 40, 50 degrees open at impact. My chest here is typically going to be about 20, 30 degrees open at impact. My lead shoulder is going to be protracted, right? So my shoulders are going to be anywhere from square to slightly open, but my chest is going to be more open. The reason why that is possible is because your shoulders can move independently of your chest. If I protract my lead shoulder and then retract my trail shoulder, my chest is still pointing in the forward direction, but I've closed my shoulders, right? So that's one thing we got to understand is that the lead shoulder is protracted. And what that means is that the shoulder blade is moving away from the spine. So chest is open, shoulder blade moving away from the spine. My lead arm is typically going to be pretty close to my chest here. Some players you will see they're like this. It's a little bit out away. They'll have a little bit of bow in that lead arm, which is fine. You'll see players like Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka that look like this. But most players you're going to see that lead arm is going to be fairly straight there. The hands are going to be in front at impact. They're going to be a square club face. Depending on how strong or weak your grip is, if you have a weaker grip, meaning that your thumb is more on top of the grip, right, you're going to have more of a bow in that lead wrist, and you're going to have more of a bent back trail hand. If you have more of a stronger grip, right, you're going to have more of a flatter lead wrist at impact. Your hands are going to be a little bit more rotated. You're typically going to have your trail hand's going to be more under, and there's going to be less extension in that trail hand there at impact. And then the head is usually kind of right down on the ball with an iron. With a driver, you're basically, everything's going to be a little bit more tilted away. It's going to be a little bit more angled away this way. And you're going to be hitting, your head's going to be more behind the ball, and you're going to be hitting more up on the golf ball. If you have any specific questions about where things generally are in the better players at impact, feel free to ask, but that's just kind of a general rundown. So Lloyd W says, dropping my right shoulder in the forward swing, hitting behind, very erratic suggestions for a cleaner hit. Yeah, so you're dropping the right shoulder because the hips are going like this, most likely. It's hard to say without seeing your swing, but typically it's because your hips go like that, and now my right shoulder is going back. You want to have that right side bend eventually as you're coming down, but I would try to feel like your left hip is more angled down, right? So that when you're starting your downswing, that your hips stay angled, your left hip stays angled down. So a good drill to do is to take an alignment stick and put it through your belt loops, and then take some swings where at the start of the downswing, you're keeping that angled down. If you get that early right side bend, right, if you go into that drop in the right shoulder, typically you'll go like that, and now it's angled up. So I try to feel like it's staying angled down as you're coming through, and that will make it a lot easier to, that will keep the right shoulder from dipping too much and having those issues. That's more than likely what's going on. It's hard to say without seeing your swing for sure, but that's just the typical thing that I see. So Marshall R says, "Hi Q, I saw one of Clay's videos a day or two ago, maybe an older one, and can't find it now. It's a slice fixing video where he actually talks about turning in the club address. Can you remind me which video that is?" I'm not sure of the exact video that you're talking about. Fortunately, or not unfortunately, but we have hundreds of videos on the website, and we probably have probably close to over 50 videos on slicing by itself. So what I'd recommend doing is using the search engine and search slice or slicing to find the video that you're looking for. I wish I knew the exact one that you're talking about, but I just don't have all the videos memorized. So if you want to use that search function, it's up in the upper right-hand corner if you're on the normal website, like if you're on the normal formatted website. So that'd be like on a desktop, laptop, computer, or something like that. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a little search box there. I think there's a slice vault too. There's a good chance that it's probably in there too. So to use the search function, just type slicing or slice in there. To get to the slicing vault, click the instruction tab, then the vault categories, then the slicing vault. If you're on a mobile device and you want to use that search function, you can still use it. It's just a little bit harder to find. All you got to do is select the icon in the upper right-hand corner. That will expand a menu. Scroll down the menu there, and you'll find at the bottom there, you'll find the search function. Robert M says, "I seem to have a problem with my hand slipping when swinging. The intent is to stay loose, but sometimes I find grip slips. Do you have a solution to prevent it?" So one, I'd make sure that your grip is correct. So let's go over that real quickly. When you're holding onto the club, you want to have it a little bit in the fingers and a little bit in the hand. So basically you have this crease in my hand that's just at the base of my finger there. And then I have on the first knuckle, I want the club to go through there. And then I have the crease that's at the base of my pinky. And then I have a crease right there that's about an inch below that. So if I have the club like that, I want it to go right through there. And the reason why I want it to be like that is I don't want to have it too much in my fingers, because that's going to promote a long thumb, and that gaps in here that makes it easy for the club to slip in my hand. I don't want to have it too much in my hand like this. This is good for putting, but not for when we're trying to swing with speed, because it gets it in too much in my hand, which makes it difficult to hinge my club. So basically, I'm only going to be able to get the club to go about that far. I can't create any lag, and I can't, no matter how much I hinge the club, I just can't get the club to go back. So if I have it in that kind of place, that's going to give me the coverage that I want. Now I don't have any gapping, right? I don't have any gaps. I have a nice, good coverage. My fingers are spread out on here, and I can also get some good hinge in the wrist to be able to create some speed. And then the trail hand, if you put your pinky and thumb together like that, it creates that crease between the two pads on the side of your hand. So you have your thumb pad here, then you have the pad that's on the outside of your hand. So you can see that creates a crease there. I want to take that crease and put it right on top of, or a little bit on the side of, my thumb. And if I do that, you can see I get a nice secure grip there. Now, as far as whether you use overlap, interlock, or a 10-finger grip, it's really completely up to you. If you have, if you're a junior, if your hands just aren't really strong, or maybe you have arthritis and it hurts your hands to put a lot of pressure into the grip. You may want to consider a 10-finger grip, because you may find it easier, because it's just easier to put more force into the handle if you're doing that. Now, as far as putting pressure into the grip, basically you want to hold on to the grip, hold on to the club hard enough to where it doesn't slip out of your hands, but not so hard that you can't move, that you're too rigid, right? So you got to find the happy medium that works for you. So it sounds like either your grip is not secure because you have it too much in your fingers or too much in your hand, and you want to have that happy medium there, or you're just trying to be really too loose with the hands, and then the club slips out of your hands because of that. The other thing would be that I forgot to mention with the grip. You want to make sure that your thumb is close to your hand like that. You don't want to have your hand on the grip like this, where the thumb is spread apart from the hand. That's also going to make the club kind of slip around everywhere. So you want to have the thumb next to your hand like that. And the same thing with your trail hand, right? You don't want to have it like this, right? Because that's going to make it move around. Get your thumb next to your hand like that, and that's going to promote some security as well. So I make sure that your grip is right, and then I would put pressure into the handle enough to hold on to it, but not so much that it slips out of your hand. And you do this intuitively. You really do. It sounds like you may be intentionally trying to hold it very loose, and that's why it's moving out of your hand. So, don't intentionally hold it loosely. Intentionally hold it in a way that allows you to have control of it, but not let it come out of your hand. And you will do this intuitively. If you just hold the club like this and have a buddy come and pull on the end of the club, intuitively you will put more pressure into the club so that he doesn't pull the club out of your hand. That's the same thing that's happening in the golf swing. In the golf swing, when the speed picks up, you have to put more pressure into this handle in order to hold on to it. Otherwise, it's going to come out of your hand. If you think about like the long drive guys that are swinging 150 miles an hour, they're putting a ton of pressure into this handle. I mean, they're basically trying to break. They're putting so much pressure into it that it's trying to break it off. So this idea that you're holding the club like a tube of toothpaste or a baby bird throughout the swing, that's a total fallacy. So if that's what you're trying to do, that's probably the reason why it's coming out of your hand. So make sure that you're putting some force into the handle, so that way you can hold on to it. But you don't want to put so much force into it that you can't control it at all, or you can't use the momentum of the club. So let the club kind of do some work for you, but also put pressure into it so that way you can control it. There's a great drill in the lag course that has a lag progression. And the first progression, basically, you're just taking the club and you're swinging it like this, right? And this is going to give you a good sense and feel for how much pressure you should be putting into the handle. If you're putting so much pressure in the handle that the club can't freely swing back and forth, then you're putting too much. If you're putting so little pressure into the club that the club's slipping out of your hands, then you're not putting enough, right? So that would be a good test to check out. So to get to the lag course, click the instruction tab, then click the top speed click the top speed golf system, then click the top speed lag course, and find that lag progression. All right, so Steve A says, do you have some suggestions for improving distance control with putter, 3 putts, or my big miss on the course? I'd recommend go and practice your putting and practice your lag putts. And do it from all different areas. So a good drill that I like to do, typically these putting greens, they have several holes on them. So I'll drop 3 balls down, and I'll pick one that's 20 feet, another one that's maybe 30 feet. Hopefully you have them kind of staggered around, but I would go to different holes, right, and hit the different holes. Or what you can do is you can pick one hole and then drop a ball at 20 feet, drop a ball at 25 feet, drop a ball at 30 feet, and putt and get a sense and feel for those, and just practice getting a feel for that. And remember, with these lag putts, you're not necessarily trying to make them, you're trying to get them close. So it's not like a shorter putt, like a 10-footer, where you have to make sure that you get the ball to the hole, right, to give yourself a chance. For for a longer putt, a lag putt, it's okay if you leave it 2 feet short. You're not always you're not gonna have a really good chance to make those. You need to give yourself the best chance not to 3-putt. So if you're being too aggressive with them and you're hitting them by that, if that mindset change may help you to get that working a little bit better. So that's what I recommend doing. Just do the drills that where you're hitting at different lengths all the time to different holes. What doesn't work, or what doesn't work very well, is if you sit in one spot and let's say you drop 50 balls at 25 feet and you just sit there and hit 25-foot putts all day. That doesn't really help you that much. It helps you a little bit, but not as much as it would if you dropped a ball at 20 feet and another one at 25, another one, and you just went randomly, because that's what's happening on the golf course. You're not going to have, not every lag putt's going to be 25 feet and be, whatever. If the putt that you're practicing uphill, not everyone's going to be uphill. So I practice uphill, downhill. I practice ones that break a lot, right to left, left to right. I would just go around to the practice range and just practice them, put in the time and the effort, and you will see a much bigger improvement in those. So Keith B says, could you go over your demo from a couple of days ago, push with the lead hand and pulling with the trail, create lag? So what I'd recommend doing is going and watching the archive from a couple of days ago, so that way we can answer a few more questions. If you ever want to see something again, you can go to the archived office hours and you can watch it over and over and over until you're blue in the face, basically. So to get to the archives, click the office hours highlights. Click office hours and office hours highlights and scroll bottom of the office hours highlights page, and you'll find the archived office hours. So Ken P says, did you just say to push off the back foot to start the downswing? I thought we pushed down on the heel of the front leg to start the downswing and then straighten to pull up into the release. So as you're getting up to the top of the swing, you're going to be pushing off, and then you're pushing off and getting pressure into the lead foot to start the downswing. So they're happening at the same time. It's not, when you're pushing off, you're putting pressure into the lead leg, right? You're basically shifting the pressure. So you're doing both. You're pushing off and you're putting pressure into the lead foot. So Bryson N said, great visuals on moment on impact. Thanks, Bryson. Glad it helped. All right, so since we don't have any more questions, we'll go ahead and stop it from right there. Everybody have a good rest of your day. We'll be back here tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Have a good rest of your evening, and I'll talk to you all next time.